Galactic Council, stunned, Earth strikes back. The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with tension as representatives from 47 different species gathered for what many considered the most important session in galactic history. The translucent walls of the station orbiting the neutral world of Kepler 442b reflected the nervous energy of delegates whose civilizations spanned thousands of star systems. Ambassador Zethkri of the Altarian hegemony stood at the central podium, his 6 arms gesticulating wildly as he addressed the assembly. His species had ruled the Eastern Spiral Arm for over 3 millennia, and his voice carried the authority of countless conquered worlds. "Fellow council members," Zethkri's voice resonated through the universal translators. "We gather today to discuss the most pressing threat our galaxy has ever faced. The primitive species known as humans have not only rejected our generous offer of integration into galactic society, but they have had the audacity to destroy our survey fleets." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Vorthan delegation, their insectoid forms clicking disapprovingly, while the gaseous ethereals pulsed with agitated colors. Even the usually neutral Keplerians shifted uncomfortably in their environmental suits. Council Speaker Mordun, an ancient being whose species had mediated galactic conflicts for 10,000 years, raised his staff for silence. The records show that humanity was offered the standard terms of integration 50 Earth years ago. They were given the choice to join our peaceful confederation or face isolation. Instead, they chose neither. The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing tactical readouts that made even the most battle-hardened species representatives gasp. 3 separate Altarian survey fleets, each consisting of over 200 vessels, had been completely annihilated while approaching the Sol system. No survivors, no distress signals, just empty space where proud armadas had once been. "Impossible," whispered General Caxthul of the Drakmarian Empire, his reptilian features twisting in disbelief. "Humans barely achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Their technology should be millennia behind ours." Zethkri's primary eyes narrowed as he manipulated the holographic controls. "That's what we thought too, General. Observe these recordings from our reconnaissance probes." The display shifted to show the outer edge of the Sol system. At first, everything appeared normal. The familiar gas giants, asteroid fields, and the distant glow of Earth's sun. Then the sensors detected something that shouldn't exist. Massive structures, clearly artificial, were emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. They weren't ships in any traditional sense. These constructs defied conventional understanding of spacecraft design, appearing to phase in and out of reality itself. "What are we looking at?" demanded Counselor Vexana of the Crystalline Collective, her mineral form resonating with confusion. "Human vessels," Zethkri replied grimly. "But not like anything in our databases. They seem to manipulate space-time itself, appearing and disappearing at will. Our physicists believe they're using technologies we haven't even theorized." The recording continued, showing the first survey fleet's approach. The Altarian ships, proud vessels that had conquered hundreds of worlds, suddenly began experiencing system failures. Their energy shields flickered and died. Weapon systems went offline. Life support began failing. Then the human ships opened fire. The energy beams that erupted from the mysterious craft weren't composed of any known form of weaponized matter or energy. They seemed to simply unmake whatever they touched. Altarian warships, some over 5 kilometers long, simply ceased to exist where the beams struck them. "By the ancient codes," breathed Ambassador Thys of the Aquatic Federation, her gills fluttering with shock. "They're using weaponized void energy. That's theoretical physics even we haven't mastered." The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates began shouting in dozens of different languages. The implications were staggering. Humanity, a species that had been dismissed as barely worthy of first contact protocols, possessed technology that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics as the galaxy understood them. Speaker Mordun struck his staff repeatedly against the resonance chamber, the deep gong gradually restoring order. The question before us now is not how they developed such capabilities, but what we do about it. The answer is obvious, snarled General Caxthul, his predatory instincts overriding diplomatic protocol. We assemble the combined fleet, every warship from every member species. We crush this threat before it spreads. Several delegates voiced agreement, but others seemed less certain. The Etherian representative, a being of pure thought inhabiting a crystalline matrix, projected its concerns directly into the minds of those present. Violence may not be the solution here, the Etherian communicated. These humans clearly possess defensive capabilities beyond our understanding. What if their offensive capabilities are equally advanced? What if they have weapons we cannot even comprehend? Zethkri activated another holographic display, this one showing intelligence reports gathered over the past 50 years. Our long-range observers have documented remarkable changes in human society since they rejected our integration offer. They've unified their entire planet under a single government. They've established colonies throughout their solar system, but most disturbing of all, they've been conducting experiments that our scientists classify as impossibly dangerous. The images showed massive installations on Earth's moon and Mars, structures that seemed to bend light around them. Deep space telescopes had detected energy signatures from the Sol system that matched theoretical predictions for experiments with parallel dimensions and quantum manipulation. They're not just advancing technologically, Zethkri continued. They're advancing in ways that suggest they understand aspects of reality that we've never encountered. Our xenopsychologists believe that human consciousness itself may be fundamentally different from other known sapient species. This revelation sent another wave of unease through the chamber. The galactic community had encountered thousands of intelligent species over the millennia. While they varied dramatically in physiology and culture, certain patterns of thought and consciousness had proven universal. The concept of a species with genuinely alien mental processes was deeply unsettling. Counselor Prime Veltar of the Academic Consortium, whose species had dedicated themselves to understanding the universe through pure research, requested permission to speak. If I may, distinguished colleagues, I believe we may be approaching this situation incorrectly. Rather than viewing humanity as a threat to be neutralized, perhaps we should consider them as a phenomenon to be understood. Understand them? Zethkri's voice dripped with disdain. Counselor, they destroyed 3 of our fleets without any attempt at communication. They've shown no interest in diplomacy or negotiation. What is there to understand beyond the fact that they pose an existential threat to galactic stability? Everything, Veltar replied calmly. Consider the implications of their technology. If humans have indeed discovered methods of manipulating reality at quantum levels, if they can weaponize the void between dimensions, then they possess knowledge that could revolutionize our understanding of the universe itself. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated this perspective. The pursuit of knowledge was supposedly one of the founding principles of the Galactic Council, yet here they were discussing the destruction of a species that had apparently made breakthrough discoveries. Knowledge gained through violence and isolation, countered General Caxthul. They've chosen to develop their capabilities in secret, without sharing with the galactic community. That makes them dangerous, regardless of what they might have learned. Speaker Mordun stood slowly, his ancient form casting long shadows across the chamber. The Council must decide. Do we treat humanity as a threat to be eliminated, or as a mystery to be solved? The choice we make here today will echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Ambassador Theiss raised a tentacle to request recognition. Before we decide anything, shouldn't we attempt communication one more time? Send an envoy under full diplomatic protection. Offer genuine dialogue rather than demands for integration. We tried that 50 years ago, Zethkri reminded the assembly. They rejected our offer without explanation. Because integration meant absorption into our existing structures, Theiss countered. Perhaps they want something different. Perhaps they want to be treated as equals rather than primitives, to be educated and guided. The suggestion sent ripples of surprise through the chamber. The concept of treating a newly contacted species as equals was unprecedented. The galactic hierarchy was based on technological advancement and age of civilization. Humanity barely registered on either scale, yet their recent demonstrations suggested they might belong in an entirely different category. Equals? General Caxthul's laugh was harsh and grating. They're a single species confined to one star system. We represent 47 civilizations spanning thousands of worlds. How could they possibly be our equals? Because, Veltar said quietly, they just demonstrated the ability to make our most advanced warships simply stop existing. Because they've apparently mastered technologies we can't even properly identify. Because they chose isolation and development over integration and dependence. The weight of this observation settled over the chamber like a heavy fog. For millennia, the Galactic Council had operated under the assumption that their way of managing interstellar civilization was optimal. Species were contacted, evaluated, and integrated into existing power structures. Those who refused were isolated and eventually absorbed when they became desperate enough to accept any terms. Humanity had chosen a third option: transcendence. The holographic displays flickered again, showing the most recent intelligence from the Sol system. The human constructions were growing larger and more complex. Energy readings suggested they were building something massive in the space between Earth and Mars, something that caused gravitational anomalies detectable from dozens of light years away. Whatever they're building, Zethkri said grimly, our scientists estimate it will be completed within the next 5 years. If we're going to act, it must be soon. Speaker Mordun looked around the chamber, gauging the mood of the assembly. Fear and uncertainty dominated the emotional spectrum being broadcast by the various delegates. These were representatives of civilizations that had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and coordinated effort. The possibility of facing an enemy that might be genuinely superior was challenging everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. We will recess for 1 standard day, the speaker announced. Each delegation will consult with their home governments. When we reconvene, we will vote on our response to the human situation. The options before us are clear: diplomatic contact, military action, or continued observation. As the delegates began filing out of the chamber, private conversations erupted in multiple languages. Alliance blocks that had remained stable for centuries were suddenly showing cracks as species reassessed their loyalties and capabilities. In the observation galleries above the main floor, intelligence officers from various military forces exchanged worried glances. The tactical implications of humanity's demonstrated capabilities were staggering. If humans could simply make ships disappear, traditional fleet tactics were useless. If they could manipulate space-time itself, conventional strategies of siege and blockade were meaningless. As the chamber emptied, Speaker Mordun remained at his position, staring at the holographic display showing the Sol system. In his 10,000 years of existence, he had mediated conflicts between matter-based and energy-based species, resolved territorial disputes spanning entire galactic arms, and guided the galaxy through 3 separate extinction-level events. But this was different. Humanity represented something genuinely new in galactic affairs, a species that had chosen development over integration, isolation over cooperation, and transcendence over assimilation. Their choices challenged the fundamental assumptions upon which galactic civilization was built. The question was no longer whether humanity posed a threat to the existing order. The question was whether the existing order was capable of adapting to the reality of what humanity had become. In the depths of space, monitoring stations throughout the galaxy continued their silent observation of the Sol system, recording energy signatures and gravitational anomalies that suggested humanity's transformation was far from complete. Whatever they were building, whatever they were becoming, was going to reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. The Galactic Council had one day to decide how to respond to the impossible. Galactic Council. Stunned, Earth Strikes Back. Second document. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with unprecedented activity as delegates returned after their day of consultations. Emergency sessions with home governments across 47 different star systems had produced a mixture of confusion, fear, and determination that hung in the air like charged particles before a storm. Speaker Morden noted the changes immediately. Several delegations had been reinforced with military advisors and xenotechnology specialists. The usual diplomatic protocols seemed strained as species that had cooperated for millennia now eyed each other with suspicion, each wondering if their allies possessed hidden knowledge about humanity's capabilities. "Distinguished delegates," Morden began, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber. "We reconvene to determine our collective response to the human situation. Before we proceed with formal votes, I will hear initial positions from each major alliance bloc." Ambassador Zethkri rose first, representing the Eastern Spiral Alliance. His 6 arms moved with agitated energy as he accessed his data tablets. "Honored Speaker, the Altarian hegemony has consulted with our 15 allied species. Our position is unanimous. Humanity represents a clear and present danger to galactic stability. We recommend immediate military action using the Combined Fleet Doctrine." General Cax Thul stood to support this position. "The Drakmarian Empire concurs. Our war colleges have analyzed the tactical recordings. While human technology appears advanced, they have demonstrated capabilities only in defensive scenarios. We propose a coordinated strike using the full might of our assembled fleets. Overwhelming force applied simultaneously from multiple vectors." Murmurs of agreement came from several militaristic species, but Councillor Prime Veltar of the Academic Consortium raised an objection. "With respect to our martial colleagues, their analysis contains a fundamental flaw. They assume that what we observed represents the full extent of human defensive capabilities. Given the technological leaps humanity has demonstrated, isn't it possible that what destroyed our survey fleets was merely the equivalent of their border patrol?" This observation sent an uncomfortable silence through the chamber. Military delegates shifted uneasily as they contemplated the implications. If humanity's demonstrated weapons were considered minor defensive measures, what did their actual military capabilities look like? Ambassador Thys of the Aquatic Federation activated her tank's mobility systems and moved to the center of the chamber. "The Federation has reached a different conclusion. We believe diplomatic contact is not only possible but essential. Our psychological specialists have studied human history and culture through our long-range observations. Humans appear to value independence and self-determination above all else. Their rejection of integration 50 years ago may have been a rejection of our approach rather than rejection of contact itself." "What are you proposing?" asked Councillor Vexana of the Crystalline Collective. "A fundamentally different approach," Thys replied. "Instead of offering integration into our existing structures, we offer recognition as an independent stellar nation, treaty relations rather than absorption, mutual exchange rather than one-sided education." The chamber erupted in shocked discussion. The concept of treating a single system species as a sovereign nation was revolutionary. The Galactic Order had been built on the principle that technological advancement determined political status. Species were integrated into existing power structures based on their capabilities and development level. Unprecedented, declared Elder Flux of the Temporal Observers, whose species existed partially outside normal time flow. In 40,000 years of galactic history, no single system species has been offered sovereign recognition. Because no single system species has ever possessed capabilities that challenged our fundamental understanding of reality, Veltar responded. Humanity has demonstrated technologies that appear to violate known physical laws. They deserve consideration as a unique case. Speaker Mordun called for order as debates broke out across the chamber. Before we continue, I believe we should review the latest intelligence reports. Our observation posts have detected new developments in the Sol system. The central holographic display activated, showing real-time feeds from deep space monitoring stations. What they revealed sent waves of astonishment through the assembly. The mysterious construction project between Earth and Mars had been completed, and its nature was unlike anything in galactic databases. A massive ring structure, approximately 50 kilometers in diameter, hung in space, surrounded by smaller installations that seemed to bend light around them. Energy readings from the construct suggested it was drawing power from sources that didn't register on conventional sensors. "By the void," whispered General Caxthul. "What is that thing?" The display zoomed in, revealing details that made even the most advanced species representatives gasp in recognition. The ring structure appeared to be generating controlled tiers in spacetime itself, creating windows into what looked like parallel dimensions or alternate realities. "Our physicists have designated it a trans-dimensional gateway," reported Chief Science Officer Nick Zara of the Academic Consortium. "Theoretical models suggest it provides access to multiple parallel universes simultaneously. The energy requirements for such a device should be impossible to generate or control. Yet there it is," observed Elder Flux, "and humans built it in less than 5 standard years." The implications were staggering. If humanity had mastered trans-dimensional technology, they weren't limited to the resources of a single star system. They potentially had access to infinite parallel versions of the galaxy, each with its own resources, technologies, and possibilities. Ambassador Theis's gill chambers fluttered with excitement. "This changes everything. We're not dealing with a single system species anymore. We're dealing with a trans-dimensional civilization that happens to be based in our reality's Sol system." "All the more reason for immediate military action," insisted Zeth Kree, "before they can bring resources from alternate realities to bear against us. Strike now while they're still primarily based in this dimension." "Strike with what?" demanded Veltar. "If they have access to infinite parallel resources, how do we compete with that? They could potentially bring fleets from realities where their development proceeded differently, where they've had thousands of additional years to advance." The chamber fell into contemplative silence as delegates absorbed the magnitude of the situation. They were no longer dealing with a simple question of integrating a newly contacted species. They were confronting the possibility that humanity represented a form of civilization that transcended their entire conceptual framework. "There's something else," announced Chief Intelligence Coordinator Shexmal of the Information Guild. "Our long-range sensors have detected similar ring constructs under construction in 17 other star systems within human-controlled space." "Impossible," protested General Caxthul. "Humans don't control any other star systems. They're confined to Sol." "Not anymore," Shexmal replied grimly. "Analysis suggests they've been using their trans-dimensional capabilities to establish colonies in parallel versions of nearby star systems. They're building an empire that exists across multiple realities simultaneously." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Military delegations huddled in emergency consultations, while scientific representatives frantically accessed theoretical databases. The comfortable assumptions that had guided galactic civilization for millennia were crumbling before their eyes. Speaker Mordoun stood slowly, his ancient form trembling with the weight of historical significance. Fellow delegates, we are witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity has not simply advanced technologically. They have transcended the dimensional limitations that have confined all other known civilizations. What are you suggesting, honored speaker? Asked Councillor Vexana. I'm suggesting that our traditional approaches, integration, isolation, or military conquest, may be entirely irrelevant here. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities that place them in a category beyond our existing political and military frameworks. Elder Flux projected a temporal analysis into the chamber's data systems. My species has observed the flow of time across multiple probability streams. In the vast majority of potential futures, humanity's expansion continues exponentially. They appear to be establishing what can only be described as a trans-dimensional civilization that spans infinite parallel realities. And in how many of those futures do we successfully oppose them? Asked General Caxthul with growing dread. None that we can identify, Elder Flux replied with characteristic temporal honesty. The chamber erupted in chaos as the full implications sank in. Military species that had built their identities around conquest and expansion suddenly faced the reality of confronting an enemy that could draw on infinite resources. Scientific species that prided themselves on understanding the universe discovered that humanity had unlocked secrets they couldn't even properly study. Ambassador Zethkri stood and demanded recognition. Even if what you're saying is true, we cannot simply surrender galactic sovereignty to humans without resistance. The combined fleet represents over 10 million warships. Surely that counts for something, even against trans-dimensional capabilities. Perhaps, acknowledged Veltar. But consider this. If humans have access to parallel realities, they potentially have access to versions of ourselves. They could study our tactics, our technologies, our weaknesses across infinite variations. They would know us better than we know ourselves. This observation sent a chill through the chamber that transcended species barriers. The idea of facing enemies who had perfect intelligence about their opponents through parallel observation was a tactical nightmare beyond conventional military planning. Chief Science Officer Nixara requested permission to present additional analysis. Distinguished delegates, our research teams have been working around the clock to understand the physics behind humanity's demonstrated capabilities. We've reached some disturbing conclusions. The holographic display shifted to show complex mathematical models that hurt to look at directly. Human technology appears to operate on principles that we classify as impossible physics. They're not just advanced versions of known science. They're using entirely different rules of reality. Explain, demanded Speaker Morden. Consider their weapons that make ships simply stop existing. Our analysis suggests they're not destroying matter or energy. They're convincing reality that those ships never existed in the first place. Retroactive causality manipulation at a macro scale. The chamber fell silent as delegates struggled to comprehend the implications. The ability to retroactively edit reality itself was beyond even theoretical physics. It suggested that humanity had discovered ways to manipulate the fundamental code of existence. If this analysis is correct, continued Nixara, then traditional concepts of victory or defeat may not apply. How do you wage war against an enemy that can simply decide your attacks never happened? Ambassador Theiss moved to the center of the chamber, her aquatic form undulating with determination. Then we must choose differently. If humanity possesses capabilities that transcend conventional conflict, we must transcend conventional diplomacy. What do you propose? Asked Councillor Vexana. Acknowledgement, Theiss replied. Full recognition of humanity as a sovereign trans-dimensional civilization. Treaty negotiations as equals. Mutual cooperation rather than integration or conquest. Cooperate with beings who can edit reality itself? Protested Zethkri. How do we even begin such negotiations? What could we possibly offer them that they couldn't simply create for themselves? Ourselves, answered Elder Flux unexpectedly. Our perspectives, our cultures, our unique evolutionary paths. If humans truly have access to infinite parallel realities, they would understand the value of diversity. Different approaches to existence, different solutions to universal problems. The proposal was radical beyond anything previously considered in galactic history. Instead of treating humanity as subjects to be managed or threats to be neutralized, it suggested approaching them as peers in a fundamentally restructured galactic community. The risks are enormous, warned General Caxthul. If we acknowledge their sovereignty, we're essentially admitting that they're beyond our ability to control or contain. That could destabilize the entire galactic order. The galactic order is already destabilized, Veltar pointed out. Humanity's existence challenges every assumption upon which our civilization is built. We can either adapt to this new reality or be swept aside by it. Speaker Mordun looked around the chamber, noting the profound uncertainty in every delegate's posture and expression. After millennia of confident galactic governance, they were facing a situation that demanded entirely new approaches. We will vote tomorrow, he announced. 3 options: military action through the combined fleet, diplomatic recognition and treaty negotiations, or continued observation with no direct action. Each delegation will have tonight to make final consultations with their governments. As delegates began filing out, private communications crackled between various species representatives. Alliance structures that had remained stable for centuries were showing signs of strain as individual species calculated their best options in a galaxy that suddenly seemed much larger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. In the observation galleries, military planners worked frantically on scenarios that seemed to grow more impossible with each calculation. How do you plan strategy against an enemy with infinite resources, perfect intelligence, and the ability to retroactively edit reality? The answer, increasingly, seemed to be that you don't. You adapt, or you become irrelevant. In the depths of space, humanity's trans-dimensional constructs continued their mysterious work, opening windows to realities that the Galactic Council couldn't even imagine. The galaxy was about to discover whether it was capable of evolution or doomed to extinction. Galactic Council stunned. Earth Strikes Back. 3rd document. The final session of the Emergency Council convened under circumstances unlike any in galactic history. Overnight, 3 more Galactic Council monitoring stations had simply vanished from their positions around the Sol system. Not destroyed, not disabled. Erased from existence as if they had never been built. The message was clear. Humanity's patience with observation was wearing thin. Speaker Mordun entered the chamber to find it reconfigured in unprecedented ways. Military delegations had taken defensive positions throughout the space, their honor guards armed with weapons that seemed pitiful compared to humanity's demonstrated capabilities. Scientific delegations huddled around portable analysis equipment, frantically processing data that challenged their fundamental understanding of reality. Distinguished delegates, Mordun began, his ancient voice carrying notes of uncertainty for the first time in millennia, we gather to determine our response to a situation that has evolved beyond our original parameters. Before we vote, I must inform you of developments that occurred during our recess. The central holographic display activated, showing the positions where the monitoring stations had been located. Empty space greeted the assembly, space so empty it seemed to create holes in the fabric of reality itself. The Kepler, Vorthan, and crystalline monitoring stations have ceased to exist, Mordun announced. Our analysis indicates they were not attacked or destroyed. They were retroactively removed from the timeline itself. As far as reality is concerned, they were never constructed. A wave of fear swept through the chamber that transcended species barriers. The ability to edit history itself represented a level of power that made traditional military planning meaningless. Ambassador Zethkri stood with visible effort, his 6 arms trembling with barely controlled emotion. Honored Speaker, this proves that humans are a threat beyond anything we've previously encountered. They're not content with defending their territory. They're actively demonstrating their ability to simply erase us from existence. Or, countered Ambassador Thys of the Aquatic Federation, they're demonstrating restraint. Consider, if they can erase monitoring stations from history, why haven't they done the same to our survey fleets? Why haven't they simply edited us out of reality entirely? This observation created an uncomfortable pause as delegates contemplated the implications. If humanity possessed the power to retroactively eliminate threats, their failure to use that power suggested either limitation or choice. Chief Science Officer Nixara activated her data systems and projected complex analyses into the chamber. Our research teams have made breakthrough discoveries about human capabilities. We believe their reality manipulation is not unlimited. The energy signatures suggest enormous costs for large-scale temporal editing. The monitoring stations were relatively small, isolated installations. Eliminating entire fleets or civilizations would require exponentially more power. So they are limited, General Caxthul said with growing confidence. Their power has constraints. That means they can be defeated. Can they? Asked Elder Flux of the Temporal Observers. Our analysis of probability streams shows that humanity's power is growing exponentially. Each trans-dimensional gateway they construct multiplies their capabilities. In 10 standard years, they may indeed possess the ability to edit entire civilizations out of existence. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this timeline. 10 years to decide whether to coexist with a species that could become omnipotent or attempt to stop them while it was still theoretically possible. Counselor Prime Veltar of the Academic Consortium requested recognition. Distinguished colleagues, I believe we're approaching this from the wrong perspective. Instead of asking whether we can defeat humanity, we should ask whether we should. Explain, demanded Speaker Morden. Consider what humanity represents, proof that consciousness can transcend the limitations we believed were absolute. They've discovered ways to manipulate reality itself, to exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously, to edit the past and shape the future. These are capabilities that every sapient species has dreamed of possessing. Dangerous capabilities in the hands of an unknown species, protested Zethkri. Unknown to us, Veltar corrected. But we could know them. We could learn from them. We could potentially share in discoveries that would revolutionize existence for every species in the galaxy. The suggestion sent ripples of possibility through the chamber. After millennia of technological stagnation, where advancement came through conquest and absorption rather than innovation, the prospect of genuine breakthrough discoveries was intoxicating. You're suggesting we abandon our sovereignty to chase technological advancement? General Caxthul's voice dripped with disdain. I'm suggesting we evolve our concept of sovereignty, Veltar replied. Humanity has demonstrated that the old rules, territorial control, technological superiority, military dominance, are becoming obsolete. They've transcended those limitations. Perhaps we should consider doing the same. Ambassador Thys moved to support this position. The Aquatic Federation has conducted extensive cultural analysis of human society. Their unification didn't come through conquest or absorption. They achieved it through recognition of common purpose and shared goals. They might be willing to extend that model to other species. Or they might view us as primitive obstacles to be removed, Zethkri countered. We cannot assume benevolent intentions from beings who possess godlike power. At that moment, the chamber's communication systems activated without authorization. A signal was being received from the Sol system itself. The universal translators struggled to process the incoming transmission, suggesting the communication used principles they weren't designed to handle. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council. The voice that emerged was clearly human, but it carried harmonics that seemed to resonate across multiple dimensions simultaneously. We are aware of your deliberations regarding our civilization. We believe direct communication is preferable to continued speculation. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates reacted to this impossible development. Human technology had somehow breached the most secure communication networks in the galaxy, despite being separated by dozens of light years and multiple layers of quantum encryption. Speaker Mordun called for silence and responded to the transmission. Unknown human representative, this is Speaker Mordun of the Galactic Council. We welcome communication, but we must protest the unauthorized access to our secure networks. Apologies for the intrusion, the human voice replied with what seemed like genuine regret. We required confirmation that our message would be received and understood. Standard communication protocols proved inadequate for trans-dimensional transmission. Who are you? Asked Ambassador Thys. What authority do you speak with? I am Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Trans-Dimensional Council. I speak for humanity across all accessible parallel realities. We have been observing your discussions through quantum probability analysis and believe clarification is necessary. The revelation that humanity had been monitoring their secret deliberations sent another wave of shock through the assembly. The implications for galactic security were staggering. Your technology allows you to observe our private sessions? Demanded Zethkree with outrage. Our technology allows us to observe quantum probability cascades associated with large-scale decision-making processes, Sarah Chen corrected. We weren't eavesdropping on your discussions. We were observing the mathematical structures your decisions create in space-time. The universe has a way of broadcasting important choices before they're made. Chief Science Officer Nixara frantically accessed her databases. Quantum probability analysis of macro-scale decision patterns? That's purely theoretical physics. The computational requirements would be astronomical. Yes, agreed Sarah Chen, which is why we utilize processing power distributed across multiple parallel realities. What's impossible for a single-dimension civilization becomes routine when you can share calculations across infinite versions of yourself. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of humanity's capabilities became clear. They weren't just technologically advanced, they had restructured their entire civilization to operate across multiple realities simultaneously. Why are you contacting us now? Asked Speaker Mordun. Because your current decision process has a 97% probability of resulting in unnecessary conflict, Sarah replied. We would prefer to resolve this situation through cooperation rather than demonstration of superior force. The casual mention of superior force sent chills through the military delegates. General Cax Thul stood with visible effort. Are you threatening the Galactic Council? No, General. Sarah's voice carried notes of sadness. We're offering you a choice. Your current options, military action, diplomatic recognition, or continued observation, are based on obsolete assumptions about the nature of power and civilization. We're suggesting a fourth option, evolution. What do you mean by evolution? Asked Veltar with scientific curiosity. We mean transcending the limitations that have confined galactic civilization for millennia. Competition for resources becomes meaningless when you have access to infinite parallel realities. Territorial control becomes irrelevant when you can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Military dominance becomes obsolete when you can edit reality itself. And you're offering to share these capabilities? Thys asked with barely contained excitement. We're offering to guide species that demonstrate readiness for transcendence. Not all civilizations are prepared for trans-dimensional existence. The psychological and philosophical challenges are enormous. But those willing to evolve beyond their current limitations can join us in exploring possibilities that stretch beyond imagination. The offer sent shockwaves through the chamber. Instead of integration into human society or continued isolation, humanity was proposing something unprecedented: elevation to their level of existence. What would be required? Asked Counselor Vexana of the Crystalline Collective. Abandonment of territorial thinking, development of quantum consciousness, and acceptance that individual species' identity is less important than collective transcendence. Essentially, you would need to become something more than what you currently are. And if we refuse? General Caxthul asked with military directness. Then you continue as you are, Sarah replied without hostility. We don't require participation, but you should understand that reality is changing around you. Other species in distant galaxies are beginning similar transcendence processes. Eventually, single-dimension civilizations will become as obsolete as stone tools. You're saying we'll be left behind by universal evolution itself, Elder Flux observed with temporal clarity. Not left behind, Sarah corrected. Protected and preserved. We maintain sanctuary dimensions for species that prefer traditional existence patterns. But participation in galactic affairs would gradually shift to trans-dimensional civilizations. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't threatening conquest. They were offering evolution or peaceful obsolescence. Speaker Mordun stood slowly, feeling the weight of galactic history on his shoulders. This is far beyond the authority of the Galactic Council to decide. Such choices would need to be made by individual species governments. Understood, Sarah agreed. We'll maintain open communication channels for any species ready to begin transcendence processes. We'll also continue developing our civilization across accessible realities. The choice of whether to join us or remain as you are belongs to each species individually. And our current deliberations about military action or diplomatic recognition? Asked Zethkri. Render them irrelevant, Sarah replied gently. You cannot successfully attack trans-dimensional civilization with single-reality weapons, but you also don't need treaties with beings who have no interest in your resources or territory. We exist beyond the economic and political structures that drive traditional conflicts. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. In the space of a brief conversation, humanity had rendered centuries of galactic political theory obsolete. Elder Flux was the first to speak. The future probability streams have shifted dramatically. Humanity's offer creates potential timelines we've never observed before. Timelines where individual species transcend dimensional limitations, Veltar added with scientific excitement. The possibilities for discovery and exploration would be infinite. Timelines where we abandon everything that makes us who we are, countered General Caxthul. How do we know we'd still be ourselves after this transcendence process? How do we know we won't be? Asked Ambassador Thys. Growth and change have always been part of evolution. This might simply be the next step in consciousness development. Speaker Mordun called for order as debates erupted across the chamber. The vote we planned has become meaningless. Instead, we must decide how to communicate humanity's offer to our respective governments and peoples. Some species will choose transcendence, observed Counselor Vexana. Others will prefer preservation in sanctuary dimensions. The galaxy will fundamentally restructure itself around these choices. The age of single-reality civilization is ending, Elder Flux announced with temporal certainty. We are witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in universal history. As delegates began filing out to carry impossible news to their home worlds, the chamber felt different. The comfortable assumptions that had guided galactic civilization were dissolving, replaced by possibilities that stretched beyond imagination. In the depths of space, humanity's trans-dimensional constructs continued their work, opening doorways to realities where consciousness itself had evolved beyond current limitations. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of transcendence had begun, and every species would soon face the choice between evolution and preservation, between becoming something more than they were or remaining safely what they had always been. The future belonged to those ready to transcend the very concept of limitation itself. Humanity had not struck back against the galaxy. They had offered it a path to infinity.